And unfortunately, Miranda here is just gonna end up getting the short end of the stick. She actually ends up being the weakest exorcist in comparison to all of the rest. And you really won't even be able to believe why, even though it makes a ton of sense. As we know, she probably has one of the most reliable and useful abilities ever in the entire series, having her being the sole reason as to why the Exorcist would even win a majority of their own battles. Miranda is easily one of the biggest assets when it comes to the Exorcist, and without her, they would not get anywhere. What exactly would make her such a valuable exorcist when she's so weak? This would be the very fact that she has time control as an ability. Now, with time being used as a power, of course, we would think it would make a character absurdly strong because that's only natural. Time is something that no one can fight against, and that is a fact. Unfortunately, that wouldn't be true for Miranda's case. When it comes to her time ability, you can fight it back in a few more ways than one. To really get into the details, time recovery is an ability that can ultimately benefit you in the short term when it comes to a fight. However, long term, arm. If Miranda uses time recovery, my arm will no longer be broken. And now this would only be possible if I'm close enough to her to be in the radius of her time recovery ability. Let's say, for instance, she has a radius of 20 meters. The minute I get 20 meters, things she did, useless. While I'm inside of this radius, I'll practically be unstoppable. But if I walk out, every single injury a person has will come back to them. We have Lavi, for example, leaving the radius of Miranda's, and his entire body will end up getting destroyed. Honestly, it's safe to come to the conclusion to say that Miranda's power really just prevents the inevitable. Let's say you're inside of her radius and you're fighting an Akuma and you just so happen to die. Well, while inside of this radius, you're still going to be alive, but the minute Miranda is overexhausted. And the biggest weakness that Miranda would have would be her clock. Now, when it comes to her clock, when using her time record ability, a giant clock would be summoned, making the ability actually happen at all. Now, if anyone were to damage this clock, Miranda will experience a lot of pain due to any damage that the clock suffers. So long story short, there's multiple ways of beating Miranda, which is why she'd be known as the weakest. And not only that, she has no combat abilities. So we can have someone simply kill her while she's in her zone, and then she'll probably survive for 10 days because that's the longest to keep her alive. And not only that, you can just damage the clock. This guy is actually a bit of a blockhead, and for good reason, because this gives him the tenacity to push through and fight through multiple situations. He's not really special outside of his gifted ability for immense physical strength. Now, not much, Chaoji would be no stranger to running head first into the presence of a Noah, knowing he is actually nothing in comparison to them. He would be able to lift an immense amount of rubble that is crushing him and Lena Lee in a desperate situation, and this would all be while he's not fully tapped into his potential with the Innocents, nor is he even close to becoming part of the certified ranks of an exorcist. His actual synchronization levels would be something to take quick notice of, because he would be able to lift all of this while barely maintaining a connection. Now, when it comes to actually being synchronized with the Innocents at 80% or above, he would definitely be in a different league. But with is definitely super strength, because that's what we've seen out of him. What else would it actually be? And so we have a simple power for a simple-minded character, and yet he would still be able to beat Miranda or anything of the like. Yet she would stay awake for a good 10 days to keep herself alive, and once she finally gets exhausted, she'll be tired and then eventually die. And not only this, he can always just throw rocks or anything at the clock that she's using to activate her ability to begin with. Chaoji probably wouldn't even need the superhuman strength at all to win such a fight, but it just adds insult to injury. Alright, so take quick notice of one of the best prodigies that the Black Order has ever found. Timothy is literally only a child, and he would have one of the best abilities an exorcist can have, with that ability being possession. Now, you would imagine that he would be able to defeat almost anybody with an ability such as possession, because he's just going to take over their bodies, and honestly, he can just kill anyone that ends up entering his body, or he can make his opponents kill themselves by possessing them, which, logically so, it should make him higher on this list, but there are special circumstances that make him this low. Now, Timothy's body possession would be just as easy as moving his soul from one body to the next, leading him to jump from body to body whenever he pleases. However, there's also another method for him to switch bodies, and that's if anyone comes into contact with the gem on his head. Now, with this ability, Timothy would be able to have full advantage in using all of the abilities of anyone he possesses, let alone and secret techniques, without even having to know them himself. However, he wouldn't really be good at using many of these techniques because he would not have the fighting experience to back it up. Timothy can fight in a person's body, but will he be as good as them and as capable as them when it comes to fighting and winning? That is a completely different story, which is why he would be so low, because even if he did take someone else's body and used all their abilities, anyone with enough fighting experience could possibly just use Timothy's own body against him and beat him. The depth behind this possession ability wouldn't even really stop here, because this measly child would be able to actually possess a level 2 Akuma. However, he would not be able to possess anything higher due to his experience. He would have the potential to actually tap into the power of a level 3 Akuma, but he would just not be there yet, making him so low on the because it is so out of his league. Timothy's soul will simply just bounce off of it as if he's not even there. And so if you really want to use a huge bag of common sense here, you would just have to come to the conclusion that Timothy is about as strong as a level 2 Akuma, at least for now. And with him being equivalent to that of a level 2 Akuma, of course, other characters kill level 2 Akumas very easily, which also ties into his low placement. One thing that could really make a difference with his ability is the fact that he can innocensify any Akuma that he possesses, making them a perfect tool for exorcism because of dark matter abilities. Physical strength would be a different story, but you wouldn't be able to save the soul of the Akuma, which completely defeats the point of being an exorcist. With this innocence-infested Akuma Timothy uses, it would only be able to fight at the level of a level 2 Akuma, making him pretty weak. But of course, he has a lot of room for improvement. Noise Marie would be an amazing string user with a lot of insane possibilities coming into consideration with just his pure strength alone, because easily, while using the hundreds of different strings that he controls with just his fingers alone, he is able to grab an Akuma the size of a skyscraper and completely poison it with the melody that he plays through his strings, leaving the Akuma completely paralyzed for easy pickings for any exorcist to just easily finish off. But if you thought the power of his strings were crazy enough, these strings would be sharp and would be like razors, cutting anything they come into contact with, making it tolerate an insane amount of pain. Noise Marie can easily rip anyone to shreds, but the real kicker here would be Noise Marie's insane reaction times. This would separate him from a good amount, letting him know exactly what he needs to deal with at a moment's notice so that he can completely plan and finish off with ease by using his strings. However, this would all be possible because of his headphones. Now, this is a big glaring weakness that he would have. If his headphones were to come off, he would be nothing more than a sitting duck, not being able to process everything in his surroundings. Even so, he would still put pressure on a level 4 Akuma. He wouldn't give it any fatal damage. Reactions would earn him this spot on the list. Not only that, but if he were to go up against Timothy, he could probably depression ability. And I would argue that for anyone else on this list, all because of their speed and reactions. Old age would be nothing in the face of Bookman, because Bookman would always be one step ahead of his opponent. One thing that would stand out above his strength and power would definitely be his experience. Bookman would have a fighting style that allows him to be defensive, offensive, and supportive all at once. When using Heaven Compass, he would take full control of his Black Needles and block any oncoming attacks, even allowing him to stop the attack of a level 3 Akuma. The durability of these needles is definitely something you would want to think about. Bind people down with these same needles, causing a level 3 Akuma to be at his mercy. He would even be able to finish off a level 3 Akuma in just one attack, which should give you an idea just what exactly Bookman is capable of when it comes to his combat prowess. Even so, he'd be able to manipulate the formations of these needles, allowing himself to even defend Miranda's clock, ultimately covering every single angle that an attack could come from. Really just gives Bookman the perfect opportunity to survive against any attack. And the use of his needles would get even better because outside of just attacking, restraining, and defending, he can even use these needles as a mobility option, letting Alan down in the blink of an eye. And of course, he'd be able to use these same needles on himself, allowing himself to actually fly through the air. With so much battle experience behind Bookman, it's really hard to see anyone actually outsmarting him in a fight. Bookman would already be prepared in this situation by defending himself with these needles, and he can also get out of harm's way due to the needles moving him around. If it wasn't a surprise to any of you, this old man still got it. This one is definitely a bit shocking because Lena Lee would be one of the best fighters in the entire series, with her Dark Boots abilities actually giving her insane strength. And not only this, she'd be able to manipulate the wind and have some of the best mobility compared to every other exorcist, because not only this, she would be able to actually use her abilities to reach top speeds such as the speed of sound. Now, this normally would make her above average against everyone else on this list because she would take the vibrations in the air and amplify them to her own boots, which is around her, and channel it through her boots. Which means unless there are vibrations that are strong enough that will allow Lena Lee to move at the speed of sound, she won't reach those top speeds on her own, making her not as fast as you'd really want her to be. Even though she can't reach the speed of sound normally, by fulfilling certain conditions she can. Even if she can't reach these same else, that really gives her an edge above most fighters, and that would be her wind manipulation, with her being able to create tornadoes with utmost ease, and she can use it to manipulate. Yet unfortunately, even while having the power to be able to kick tornadoes without a second for this glaring weakness, she would actually use an Akuma's own ability against it, because with its gravity ability, she would make her legs turn into iron shackles and use the weight of the gravity that the Akuma is creating in order to crush it because of all of the weight she possessed. What this really shows is that she actually has a certain kind of combative genius that allows her to take advantage of her own opponent's abilities as long as they're in line with exactly what she needs. Since you made it this far in the video, make sure to leave us a like and also sure to check out our Patreon in the description and the pinned comment below. It helps us to continue creating content, and I look forward to making more content in your support. So that being said, her power is actually really questionable until we get to the point where she uses crystal type innocence. With her newfound innocence through the crystals, that would create a new anti-Akuma weapon, and with this new crystal innocence, Lena Lee would actually noticeable damage to kill the level 4 Akuma, but with her speed alone, she's able to hold it off and maintain its attacks from actually killing her and Alan the entire time. Lena Lee would keep up with using these new weapons before in her life, and her speed would reach new heights completely, and her reaction speed would also increase because these new boots would actually respond to her single thoughts. So if she thinks it, it would be able to happen with this new weapon. However, Lena Lee's newfound speed would be enough to make Alan sick, being able to take on a level 4, even though while not making any notable damage, with just her speed alone, she's able to easily overwhelm an opponent, and that's what made her this high on the list. Her speed alone is enough to allow her to fight a level 4 Akuma. Now, whether or not she's going to take it down is a completely different story. Superhuman strength, and he would say that this enormous weapon that he carries would weigh little to nothing. With so much strength and destructive force, Lavi can easily put holes in buildings, react to bullets and block them with his hammer, and so much more. He would even be able to use Lena Lee's weight tactic that she used against the level 3 on any opponent by making his hammer grow to such a size that he's gonna crush anyone he faces off against. Lavi would even be durable enough to survive getting punched through buildings. Even Alistair would think that he would be dead from the amount of attack force that he uses on him, yet Lavi would get back up as if nothing even happened, and immediately retaliate with his hammer. Yet super strength wouldn't be one of his only benefits. His intelligence and experience would put him leagues ahead of fighting anyone. On top of this, he would use his numerous bookman spells, with his Pillar of Fire actually being one of his most staple abilities. He would put a stamp on the ground, with the size of the attack becoming enormous, almost impossible to dodge even, because it would have such a wide area of effect. And this attack, when it comes to using this attack on a level 3, the level 3 would actually be able to deflect the entire Pillar of Fire ability. Now, with Lena Lee actually struggling to put a dent on this level 3 Akuma, and Lavi doing the same exact thing, they would be in the same boat, with a level 3 being able to take on both of their attacks. However, Lavi's abilities would still give him a slight edge over Lena Lee, which is why he would be ranked this high. The main factor separating the two would be Lavi's experience, his superhuman strength, and his knowledge, alongside his durability. Outside of just using the Pillar of Fire, Lavi's other stamps would allow him to use the power of wind and electricity. He, just like Lena Lee, would be able to control the wind and make multiple tornadoes. Rather than just making one tornado like Lena Lee with a single kick, he would be able to make 6 different tornadoes spiral out of control by putting 6 stamps on the ground. Not only this, but with his wood stamp, he would be able to completely control nature and bend it to his will, giving him an advantage based on whatever location he's fighting in. Long story short, Lavi can easily create fire because he can combine stamps and make fire and lightning all in one attack to create a serpent that has the properties of fire and electricity. Who knows how much damage this could have actually done to that level 3 Akuma, because he would use this attack on a Noah no less. Lavi would be this high on the list because, unlike Lena Lee, although they both cannot damage a level 3 Akuma, and she did face off against a level 4, even though, again, she didn't really show any noticeable damage, Lavi has more durability than her, more experience, higher intelligence, and not only that, his attack potency would more than likely actually be able to kill her. Now, with her being so fast to take on Lavi, with his brains and his area of perception of having future bookman eyes, by paying close enough attention to detail, he could devise a plan and easily level 3 that Lena Lee took on. He actually could not fight it because it was on the ocean, and he has little to no way of fighting on the water, and on top of this, he was also injured while fighting the Akuma. So unless the level 3 Akuma was on the ship the entire time, he wouldn't even be able to fight it. And to top it all off, his hammer would give him mobility options, being able to launch him in the air and also stretch across cities easily, let alone travel through the air. Used to describe Aleister, he would be a monster. Easily, he would be able to take on the likes of Allen and Lavi together, and his speed would be so fast that they would hardly even notice him running right by them. Even with Lavi trying to crush him with his giant hammer, using and abusing its enormous size, Aleister would actually catch the hammer with just his teeth alone. His strength and speed are easy to take notice of, but one thing that allows him to stand out above anyone else is his regenerative properties. He would fight through this pain and fight with his entire body being dehydrated without it having an ounce of blood within it. He would still be able to get up and fight beyond this. If you were actually lucky enough to be able to kill Aleister, losing all of his blood, getting crushed to death, and even having the inside of his body actually explode, these things would not stop him from coming damage, turning his arms into a shield and a stronger weapon. Now, there is a disadvantage to Aleister actually using these 3 blood vials, because these blood vials would have the blood of an Akuma inside of them, and it would cause his body to actually get poisoned. But I don't even think that even matters, considering what he's really capable of. Practically dead, the blood from inside his body will take form in its own shape and combat its opponents. Aleister is one of the few characters that is actually on par with a Noah, at least in brute strength. Not only this, he'd be one of the few characters to actually take down a Noah himself. as impossible as that really seems. So even if you do kill Aleister, you're going to have to deal with his blood monster blood, leaving him to be able to fight and completely overwhelm a person without having to think. Aleister in this form wouldn't even be capable of feeling pain. He is actually unstoppable. Have an attack just go right through him because his body would be impossible to actually hit, leaving his body to not only split in half and make it so that you're fighting two different people at once, but by landing a direct hit, he can catch your entire arm with his head, causing you to be trapped within his blood in a sense, making it so that you can no longer fight. This form is really the consideration. He can come back to life so easily and fight far beyond his limits, along the lines where other characters really would have just died. With Lao Shimin being the anti-Akuma beast that is able to take down colossal Akuma in just a few punches. This you understand just why Claude would be a general at all. With just the Destruct to climb the ranks up to the General Exorcist ranking. Honestly, there's really not that much to say outside of the fact that this giant monkey is an utter powerhouse with its moves ranging from punches that can kill some of the strongest Akumas and even take on Lulu Bell while she's attacking the egg inside of the Exorcist base. And not only this, Destruction Shell logins would allow Lao Shimin to erupt in a giant explosive wave, damaging everything in its presence. Winter Sokolo would be the next general on the list, down every single Akuma in his path, even the giant ones. He could take on multiple giant Akuma by himself and kill them in practically 2 to 3 hits. His power would be madness. To be fair, there isn't much I can really say about these generals, but what really just gives them these rankings is the very fact that they can easily kill level 3 Akumas and higher without even having to try. And not only this, their rankings really just speak for themselves. Surprisingly so, we would have a third Exorcist actually make it on the list, with this Exorcist being Madarao. Madarao would be the prodigy of the third Exorcist program, and this really shouldn't come as quite a surprise because he's the best at using their abilities and his composure is second to none. Benefits of Madarao's abilities would allow him to walk through any Akuma sealed barrier that only Akuma can pass through, making him an exception to most traps that the Akumas would make. But really, who am I kidding? The thing that really makes him so high on this list is happening to them. The ability in question would be a Primordial Well, which lets any third Exorcist vacuum space and swallow any of their targets into another dimension that exists within their bodies. Even hundreds upon thousands of Akumas can get killed at a time. Madarao would easily be the definition of a one-man army if it really comes down to it. Not only this, but they also are able to use spells that have the combat experience of a crow, which gives him a complete edge over most individuals in a fight because he would have insane experience, acrobatic potential, and reactions that would be similar to that of a ninja Kanda. Honestly, I don't even think it would be too far-fetched to say that Kanda is easily the best fighter in the order when it really comes down to it. With his Mugen, he would easily take down level 2 Akumas, and not only this, after more and more combat experience, of course he would take down the later levels of Akumas with utter ease, with him fighting a colossal Akuma only to slice it in half, completing a feat that most generals would do, even though he's not even in the general ranks. Even while facing off against Tiki Mick, he would be acknowledged for having really amazing speed against a Noah, putting a Noah on the defensive and forcing him to use a hostage. This really lets you know what kind of damage Kanda is capable of. He also has many options that he can use with his sword, allowing him to use ranged attacks with his netherworld creatures, known as Ichigen swords, rather than just sticking to one, which gives him a lot more options to take on an opponent and really confuse them when it comes to fighting him, giving him a preferred fighting style that lets him take advantage of his speed. Kanda would also face off against Skimborek and be praised an attack known as 8 Flower Mantis, which instantaneously shoots 8 blades into an opponent, destroying them on impact. What really makes Kanda even more dangerous is the fact that he can sacrifice wave of pressure. It is able to cut anyone that comes into contact with it. I really can't lie, I think Kanda would be the last person that I'd want to fight. And not only this, the insignia that is on his chest allows him to revive himself from the dead to continue fighting. Really, there is no stopping him. He would even be capable of this before he's at his strongest. He would defend Kamui from a level 4 Akuma, and his sword would end up breaking from the durability of the Akuma, but even then, this level 4 Akuma halted itself in preparation for Kanda's killing intent. Kanda is really a lot more dangerous than what anyone actually gives him credit for. Of course, with Noah's actually taking notice of how fast Kanda is, his reaction speed shouldn't come to any surprise for anyone. He would be able to react to bullets and block Akuma and cut off its arms in one fell swoop. All the while a state in which he would let his rage completely take over, causing him to fight way more reckless than Pin and electrocute anyone that comes near him. Kanda would grow even stronger and obtain his crystal type weapon, and this would honestly put him at the ranking of a general exorcist, because it would be known that he would obtain the critical point transformation, which once obtained puts you at the level of a general in the Black Order. Kanda is in his own league. Even while having his memory wiped by Apocryphos, he would have the willpower to fight him while having his memory wiped. Who's stopping him? I honestly don't know. And of course, we would have the main character, Alan Walker, completely being worthy of this spot on the list. Alan is easily the most versatile fighter on the list. With his giant Akuma arm, he can not only turn it into a laser sword, he's fighting, but outside of his standard way of fighting, using his giant arm, if he uses his crowned clown cloak, which is the true form of his innocence, he would be able to use abilities such as Crown Edge, which allows him to shoot hundreds of different mini crowns at an opponent, which would explode on contact, letting him damage anyone from far away with a simple swipe of his Earl with only his claw, and the Crown Clown cloak that he wears, which he can use to not only tie down opponents, but also defend himself from attacks, and use this same cloak as a mobility option to get away from anyone trying to damage him. Alan easily has an answer to just about anything because of the creativity that he uses when it comes to his cloak and his arm. But it would get even better than that. When he hits his critical point transformation, he would get his best weapon yet, which would be his great sword, which is a reflection of himself. This weapon would allow Alan to destroy a vacuum of space. The greatest advantage of this weapon is the very fact that it would respond to Alan's mind. If Alan would think it, it would happen due to this weapon. And not only this, he can use more ranged attacks outside of his Crown Edge by sending slashes of his greatsword against anyone he's up against. Alan could make his sword levitate, and he could sneak attack opponents with utter ease. He has everything that he needs to win. Now we would have everyone's favorite artist, who just so happened to be blessed by God. One thing that is very clear, that without Freud, the Order would have actually been done for a long time ago. With his abilities, he'd be able to create Colossal, the giant dark matter Akumas that the Earl would create. Just one of his giants would be able to take on 3 of these Colossal Akuma. Not only this, but if he wants to, he can possess the strongest defense in the Black Order with his Garden of Embrace, allowing it to shield anyone from danger with it of Freud. Without him, they would have lost numerous times. I doubt anyone is taking out his Innocence giants or penetrating his defense. And not only this, he can draw people and take all of their abilities. He can draw Kanda and have this same Kanda that he drew take on a Noah. He can literally draw anything and combat anyone as long as his imagination allows him to do that. He has endless possibilities for fighting, because if he can draw it, it can happen. Literally. He created a version of Kanda to fight for himself, and it was able to take on a Noah. There's so much that is possible with Freud that he earns this spot on the list. Now, finally, we would have Cross Marion, the mentor of Alan Walker. Is there really any? Not only this, he would have the intellect of a genius because he's a scientist, and he would be able to deceive others by taking multiple different forms with his mask, and he would be the only exorcist to use 2 anti-Akuma weapons at once. His genius would even allow him to create, allowing him to make the Millennium Earl's entire army go against him, 1 Akuma at a time. He would even be capable of teleporting people away from specific locations and when he wants to, and of course, he'd be able to use this on himself. Even so, the Grave of Maria and Judgment would be his strongest and only weapons, because really that is all he needs. He would also be able to triple the damage of any of his rounds inside of his weapon by tapping into its annihilation level. Even when his bullets don't make full contact against a Noah, it would wear them out to exhaustion, and his bullets would be auto lock on when he wants them to be, meaning he won't even miss a single shot. Now let's just say you're lucky enough to actually stop Cross from fighting you. He can easily allow Maria to control his body and have him fight and move his body for him, making him unstoppable. And of course, it doesn't stop here. He can mind control any Akuma in person that fights him, leaving them completely available to get a bullet through their skull. And speaking of bullets through the skull, if it was not for Cross, Alan and Lena Lee wouldn't even have been able to finish off the level 4 Akuma itself, with him completely deteriorating as the why they beat the level 4 Akuma, nor is he the strongest, then I guess I'm looking crazy. With that being said, that would be every single exorcist, and with the end of this video, make sure to check out both of the videos that are going to be shown in the end screen. You'll like both of them, I guarantee it.